Hello everyone. We have Victor Rosario. He is a 65 years of age man that spent 32 years behind bars, wrongfully convicted of a fire. He actually went to prison at the age of 24, and he said he had to learn how to forgive in order to keep moving forward. Now, the New England Innocent Project and the Committee for Public Counsel Services helped him with his wrongful conviction. And so I'm going to, again, share with you how prosecutors continue to get away with withholding evidence, suppressing evidence, and just simply getting away with wrongfully charging innocent people. And they're continually using our federal and state tax money to do it. And it seems to be that no one is being held accountable for these wrongful convictions. Now, I shared with you in my last video that I reached out to a Francisco Carrillo who had spent 20 years behind bars for a murder he did not commit. And he's now running to unseat Mike Garcia in the state Senate in Congress. So, however, I reached out and I haven't received a response back, but I did reach out. And I also shared with you that the Innocent Project there helped him with his wrongful conviction. And we have so many other men that have been wrongfully convicted and they are being exonerated and released. So Mr. Rosario, he's a Massachusetts man who spent 32 years in prison after he was wrongfully convicted of setting a fire that killed 8 people. He will now receive $13 million settlement from the city where he was arrested. And he went on to say that one of the things for me to be able to continue moving forward is basically to learn how to forgive. He said at a news conference the day after the Lowell City Council voted to settle a $13 million civil rights lawsuit he brought against the city. He was 24 years old when he was convicted of arson and multiple counts of murder in connection with the 1982 fire in Lowell, Massachusetts. 3 adults and 5 children died in that fire. Now, Rosario tried to help the victims escape the flames, his attorney said, but investigators identified Rosario as a suspect and then fabricated evidence and hid evidence that the fire was actually an accident, attorney Mark Levy-Reyes said. They brought Victor Rosario for questioning. They coerced a confession after keeping him up all night. Victor was traumatized because he had tried to save children from the burning fire. He heard their screams. He was told if he signed a piece of paper, he could go. It was in English, and Rosario didn't understand it because his native language is Spanish. He signed it anyway and ended up with a life sentence. Rosario missed all of the high-water moments in his 4 children's lives. But the worst thing about being wrongfully imprisoned, Rosario said, was not being there for his mother when she died in 2007. 35 years, more than half my life, I spent behind the wall of a Massachusetts state prison, Rosario read from a written statement at the news conference outside Boston's federal courthouse. Today, this chapter is ended, and a new chapter begins. Nothing can ever compensate me for those years taken from me. Rosario's attorneys, with assistance from the New England Innocent Project and the Committee for Public Counsel Services, persuaded a judge to vacate the convictions in 2014 and set him free pending a new trial. After the state's highest court upheld the ruling in 2017, Middlesex County prosecutors said they would not retry him, citing the passage of time. In 2019, he filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Lowell, as well as about a dozen police officers and firefighters involved in the investigation, alleging constitutional violations. The settlement was announced just a couple of weeks before the trial was scheduled to start. The lawsuit said investigators used outright lies, coercion, threats, mistreatment, and sleep deprivation, and took advantage of Rosario's obvious mental health breakdown to get their client to sign a confession. There was pressure to quickly solve a high-profile tragedy, his lawsuit said. Prosecutors said at trial that Rosario and two brothers who have since died set the fire by throwing Molotov cocktails at the building. The brothers were never tried because Rosario refused to testify against them. Locke Bowman, another of Rosario's attorneys, credited the Lowell City Council for settling the case. $13 million does not begin to compensate Victor for all that he has lost, but it reflects the acknowledgement of the city of Lowell that what happened wasn't right, he said. The settlement covers all of the police officers and firefighters named individually in the lawsuit. And you know, anytime they reach out for questions or comments, you know they never respond, okay? And it says right here that since he's been freed, Rosario has started helping prisoners still behind bars and even competes in marathons. I asked the criminal justice system, the universities preparing lawyers, prosecutors, and investigators to do their very best to not let what happened to me be the future of one more wrongfully convicted individual, he said in his statement. Now, getting back to this, wanting to talk about this and just, discuss it just a little bit, we see this over and over again where, and mainly men, but where people are wrongfully convicted and the prosecutors and the sheriffs and everyone that's involved, even firefighters in situations depending on the case, right? And what has happened, they tend to get away with, these wrongful convictions and their actions or behaviors or participations and statements that they make to convict someone or to charge someone. And they are being held accountable monetarily, right? Meaning that they he's getting compensated for what they did to him. However, when we look at the bigger picture, it's our tax dollars, federal and state, that is funding these wrongful convictions. Then when the person is convicted and put behind bars, whether it's jail, state, or federal prison, that is tax money again funding to house inmates. And it's really a sad day that we continue to see these cases where wrongful convicted people are being released. And we thank the Innocent Projects for stepping up and handling these cases on every level, because without them, it would be very difficult to get wrongful convicted, truly innocent parties released from prison, because it's a moneymaker. And we need to really, understand, these wrongful convictions and how it affects not just the inmate, the person that's been convicted, the person that's been convicted that becomes an inmate, but it affects families, it affects friends, it affects the community, it affects our systems, our tax-paying dollars. It affects so many things that can be used for more positive things, but they're seeking to go after innocent people to continue to get a 90%, 98%, or 99% conviction rate. We have overzealous prosecutors, and we also have prosecutors that are really corrupt. They're evil, wicked people. I'm not saying all of them, but there are a lot of them that do not operate under the oath that they took. They do not operate under honest integrity and moral integrity, right? They do not operate under a moral compass when it comes down to these cases where you're continually seeing people being wrongfully convicted and then being exonerated, or their sentence vacated, or they become vindicated in these cases. And so he says that he had to learn, which is basic, information that we learn, most of us as children, we have to forgive. And it can be harder for some people to forgive. Some people never forgive. And forgiveness doesn't mean that you're letting people off of the hook. Forgiveness doesn't mean that there will not be consequences. And we got to be clear on that. See, forgiveness is for us when we've been harmed. If you've been a person that's been harmed, forgiveness is for you to be able to move forward. Because if you don't forgive and you harbor the anger of what's happened to you, not undermining what's happened to anyone that has suffered a wrongful conviction. But if you don't move forward and you harbor this, you cannot think outside of the anger to strategize, to think how you can work towards your freedom, work towards proving you're innocent, even behind bars. And anger can consume you in a way that it can cause all types of other stress and illness that you're carrying around, and you might not make it in life. So you want to be able to make it. You want to be able to win in this situation. You want to be able to move forward, because when they think that they got you, when they think that they have killed you, when they think they have silenced you, when they think that they have stripped you of every single thing, and you come on top, and you come out on top, they didn't win in the end. And so moving forward and staying grounded and believing in Christ and in the word, or whatever your religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs, but believing that God can do a new thing in your life, that God wants the best for you, and that your past doesn't determine your future, and your past doesn't have to determine the outcome of what you're fighting for. Understand that. And so he continued to fight for his outcome. He continued to fight for his future, and he finally was vindicated. After 32 years behind bars. He was young when he went in. He wasn't even 25. He was 24. And imagine being a good Samaritan and trying to help and risking your life to try to save people. And you hear the screams of children. You hear the screams of them in a fire, and you try to go save them. And then you're convicted because you were there trying to help. When the fire department, where were they at the time he was trying to help? Are they embarrassed that he was there trying to help and they hadn't showed up yet, or whatever the case may be? But what I'm saying is, this man risked his life, and this is what they do to him. Put him behind bars and fabricate evidence, and then hide the evidence, and then say it was an accident and he just didn't want to admit it. Is that what this is about? Because that's what it sounds like. Well, it was an accident, the fire, but he just doesn't want to admit that he did anything. And then coming up with this fabricated evidence. They hid the evidence, withheld evidence, suppressed it, what you want to call it, and then turned around and coerced the confession, knowing that this man did not have a proper interpretation or a proper, understanding of the English language, because he spoke Spanish and that was his primary language. And isn't it another thing that if you speak Spanish, they're supposed to offer you those forms in Spanish? Absolutely. If you have a Spanish-speaking person standing in front of you and you work in a hospital, a clinic, outreach, the welfare office, wherever it may be, a government office, let's say a government office, and you speak, your primary language is not English, they're supposed to offer you those forms in your language. And for them to have him to sign a form that was in English, yeah, and not in his native language that he could understand, which was Spanish, is really a violation of his civil rights. It's a violation. And he signed it anyway because they didn't offer it. And they might even told him they didn't have a form in Spanish. See, people be doing things to get away with stuff. And we are seeing years and years and years, or decades and decades and decades and decades later, the outcome of what transpired then and what really happened. And a lot of times there's the stigma put up on people that are convicted. Well, he must have did it. Well, she must have did it because, well, they must have something on the person. Otherwise, they wouldn't be. That's not necessarily true either. And we're seeing that over and over. And that's why I keep bringing these cases to you, because we keep seeing things. And I just want to bring information to bring people a level of awareness so people understand that you cannot always believe what is put in front of you. You cannot believe the media. They don't tell the truth. They don't tell the whole truth. They put out what they want. We've seen it in the R. Kelly case. And, they don't tell the truth. So then years later, we're finding out, not even just years, we're talking about this man was 24 and he spent 32 years behind bars. How many decades is that? 30 years. 3 decades, 30 years. Because 32 years is 3 decades. Plus 2 years makes it 32 years. But 3 decades it took for him to get released. And $13 million, as his attorney said, does not give this man his life back. And his mother passed away while he was behind bars. He missed all the high water moments in his 4 children's lives. He had children. Children. And the fact that he missed his mother's funeral. He was not there for her when she passed away in 2007. He said actually 35 years, because he went through 32 years behind bars, but he said 35 years, more than half my life I spent behind the wall of a Massachusetts state prison. And now he has an opportunity to start a new chapter, because he says that chapter ended. But nothing can ever compensate me for those years taken from me. And then I say before that, a lot of times they know they're wrong, these prosecutors, but they still will stand behind these wrongful convictions. And I say that if they want to stand behind wrong and these wrongful convictions, then put them behind bars, charge them. And then let's see how long they stand behind their wrongness. Because see, this is really a sad case. It's a sad case. And it's not just, well, at least he got out. No, his life. These people's lives are taken from them. And there are so many more innocent people behind bars. And that is why we definitely have to work towards legislative laws to start holding these prosecutors accountable, because they represent somewhere in the highest state of an attorney in that state. State attorneys, district attorneys, they're supposed to be able to do the right thing, and they've worked to get to to be elected into office. And when they're elected into office, this is what we're seeing. We're not seeing them practice under their oath that they took as an attorney, and then they start to run, they get elected in office, and now they are a district attorney or state attorney, whatever they may be. These prosecutors. And they are behaving in a manner that's substandard, immoral, dishonest, lack of integrity, plain evil and wicked to take an innocent person's life away from them. It's not right. And we need to know, when will they be held accountable for their wrongdoing of taking away someone's freedom that truly was innocent, and they need their freedom taken. I truly believe that they need their freedom taken from them. I truly believe that. And so, as I said, you know, sometimes it's hard to get a hold of people when you're trying to reach out to see what you can do to work in getting laws changed and things like that. And, you know, so we keep trying. It's not easy, but we keep trying. We don't give up. And I'm glad he was able to file that lawsuit. And so about a dozen police officers and firefighters that were involved, you know, in the investigation alleging constitutional violations, which they did. They violated his constitutional rights, his civil rights. They took advantage of him. They mistreated him. They even threatened him, which is sad. They threatened him. You know, he had lack of sleep. You know, they outright used lies that were just, they were lies, you know, coercion, you know, and they wanted to quickly solve a high profile tragedy. So they picked someone, you know what I mean? So they could look good. And they succumbed continually to the pressure of society. And even, you know, they let people put batteries in their back. They let people put batteries in their back, you know, and that's what continues to happen in these cases instead of them doing the right thing, you know. And even if they don't want to spend money, you know, because it takes time and effort and money to go after the real perpetrator. And one thing about it is, you're not saving any money when you wrongfully convict someone. When you wrongfully charge someone, wrongfully then convict them by a jury, and then they go spend decades behind prison walls, that's more money probably being spent of taxpayers' money than the fact is you could have took a little more time to find the real perpetrator. Hello, somebody? So, they got angry too because he wouldn't testify against his brothers, you know. And so anyway, you all leave your respectful comments below. Let's get the conversation started on what are your thoughts on this. Do you have anything to contribute to what do you think about holding prosecutors accountable for these wrongful convictions, for these polluted cases that shouldn't have never went to trial, taking away innocent people's lives for decades on end? What do you think about that? Leave your responses below in the comments. I greatly appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all to my new subscribers. Thank you to my subscribers that's been rocking with me, rolling with me, following me on this journey. And thank you all too for tuning in to the Bible study lessons and inspirational messages. Again, I truly appreciate each and every one of you that always stop by at some time. God bless you all.